future into the hands of another. Those most trusted could still let you down, even when they did not mean to. A lesson I had learned with leeway, and one I learned well. General Chang'e folded his arms across his chest, fixing me with a fierce stare.
That's not how it's done. The commanders form their troops for each assignment, considering each soldier's experience and skill. We all serve the best interests of the Celestial Kingdom.
As will I. Such hollow words I spoke. I did not do this out of loyalty to the Celestial Kingdom. All I wanted was the Crimson Lion Talisman. But it would be no easy feat to shine brighter than the other warriors. And so, in this night filled with stars, I would chart my own path to blaze across the sky. I would pursue the opportunities which I believed would capture the Celestial Emperor's attention. I would earn the talisman, the key to my mother's freedom, the sole ambition that burned in me unchanged throughout the years, now unfettered by my weak heart. It shamed me how I had hesitated before. I would never have forgotten my mother. I would have done all I could to help her. But happiness had a way of blunting one's edge, of dulling one's urgency. Never again, I vowed. Finally, General Chang'e had relented. Awarded the nondescript rank of archer, I had joined Captain Wenche's troop, the only commander I knew, and, more importantly, a celebrated one who would be assigned the most crucial campaigns. I had cursed that decision in the weeks to follow, however, shooting targets until my fingers bruised, sparring until I could no longer stand, and weaving enchantments until I was as drained as a wrung-out washcloth. Captain Wenche trained his soldiers hard, and each night I had fallen into bed, my body limp and my muscles afire, eager to sink into the oblivion of slumber. Nor was training without its dangers. Shortly after I had joined the army, Captain Wenche led me to an underground chamber lit by flickering torches. Gray stone lions with bulbous eyes lined the walls, their open jaws mimicking fearsome grins like they were mocking us. How my skin had crawled at the sight of them. The moment the captain left, the door slamming shut after him, darts hissed from the lions' mouths, hurtling toward me faster than rain pelting down in a storm. I dropped to the floor, rolling under a ledge, but I was too slow, pain streaking across my leg. I winced as I plucked the darts from my flesh, before drawing an arrow and firing in the direction they came from. By accident, more than design, I struck a lion's mouth. Its jaws slammed shut, ending its attacks. Only after I had hit all of them, my arrows protruding from their jaws, did the barrage cease, and the door swing open once more. My blood roiled at the sight of Captain Wenche standing by the entrance. Had this been a test? "Why didn't you warn me?" I demanded.
In a real battle, would the enemy warn you before attacking?
"You aren't my enemy!" He tilted his head to one side, pinning me with his stare.
I'm glad you think so. But Archer Xingyan, your performance was dismal.
I jutted my chin out, my pride pricked. "I shot all the lions. I escaped the trap." His gaze lingered on the red marks dotted across my calf, blood trickling down in thin streams.
This was the first stage in the Chamber of Lions, and you still got injured. If these were coated with venom, you'd be dead.
Shaking his head, he strode into the room and struck my arrows from the lion's jaws. Darts sprang toward us once more. I wanted to duck, to roll to safety, but as he held his ground, I forced myself to stay beside him, my heart thumping as the sharp points hurtled ever closer. Just as I was about to dive to the ground, he flicked his hand almost negligently. A shimmering wall of ice appeared before us, the darts slamming into it. My pride vanished like steam in the cool air. A gust of wind, a wall of flame, any of these would have worked. While I had learned to summon my magic effortlessly, its use did not come instinctively to me. Perhaps I had managed without it for too long. When attacked, my first instinct was to retaliate with my hands and feet. Like a mortal, I thought silently, true to my roots. His voice hardened.
The most powerful warriors are proficient in both combat and magic. You wouldn't survive long on fighting skills alone, nor can you rely on just magic. If you did, you would soon find your energy exhausted, a most dangerous circumstance. No matter what is happening, keep a clear mind to judge when to use your power for greatest impact, but don't hesitate to use it when necessary. His words struck me. Eager to prove myself, I had returned to this chamber on my own. Each time, the traps had been a little harder. Sometimes spikes shot through the ground or fire erupted from the walls. I ended the sessions sore and bruised, blood dripping from my wounds. It was only later that I learned the Chamber of Lions was reserved for the army's most skilled warriors. While most had taken months, a year even, to master every trap, it took me a matter of weeks. And I was stronger, faster, more powerful than I had ever been. But was I ready for what now lay ahead? I stared at the dark mountain, trying to quell the queasiness that rose in me, wondering if I had made the right choice in coming here. My first battle against a monster so fearsome, its very name cowed immortals into silence. Someone approached, footsteps treading over the earth. I was glad for the distraction from my bleak thoughts. Archer Xingyan, I've been searching for you. Captain Wenzhe sank down beside me. There are things you should know of Xiangliu.
I started to rise to greet him, but he gestured for me to remain seated. When we were alone, he often lapsed into such informality, rare in the Celestial Army, governed by rank and hierarchy. Was it because we had bonded at the banquet, when he lent me his strength at the moment I most needed it? Or was he at ease with me because I held no official position here, seeking neither his favor nor approval?
Of Xiangliu's 9 heads, you can only strike one, he said abruptly.
I stilled, my fingers curling around the arrow. What do you mean?
The core of its power lies within its 5th skull, the middle one.
He stared into the flames.
If we were anywhere else, we could attack it with magic. However, on this mountain, our powers are bound.
I had been warned about this. When I tried to reach for my energy here, it darted away just like it had when I was untrained. Is this some enchantment? He shifted, the leaping flames throwing shadows across his face.
No one knows. We only discovered this place when we hunted Xiangliu here. The serpent is both ancient and cunning. Maybe it knew it would be safe here.
Can't I shoot all its heads until I get the right one? My flippancy disguised my unease. The thought of 9 jaws gnashing their fangs at me sent a chill through my bones.
If that were so, we could just get a dozen archers and blanket it with arrows. Xiangliu would be long dead and we wouldn't need you.
Why don't you then? I retorted, irked by his words.
Its other heads are invulnerable. Striking the wrong one only antagonizes Xiangliu, raising its suspicions and making our task harder. The last time we were forced to retreat once our archer was incapacitated. But with every battle, we learn more about our enemy.
I stared at him in surprise. I had not realized they had tried before. Perhaps only victories were flaunted, defeats swiftly buried. Is its 5th head any different from the others? I asked.
It's not covered in scales as the rest, and its skin is almost like ours. To destroy Xiangliu, you must hit its eyes, clean through the skull.
He paused.
Unfortunately, its eyelids can't be pierced by any weapon, at least none which we know of.
I can only shoot its eyes when they're open? I repeated numbly. A terse nod.
Xiangliu protects itself well. From what we gathered the last time, these eyes only opened when it struck with acid, its most powerful attack, and even then for the briefest of moments.
He picked up a stick and tossed it into the fire. It crackled, sparks flying high, mirroring my mounting tension. My arrow fell to the ground. Is that all? How I prayed it was. He nodded, as though this were a simple matter of hitting a target from 10 paces away. Why didn't you tell me this earlier? I cursed myself inwardly for not seeking more information before. I had not cared enough then. However, tonight, I found I was not so indifferent to my own survival.
Don't doubt yourself. Xianglu won't escape this time. We have all we need, he said with calm assurance.
And what might that be? I asked a little suspiciously.
2 archers, he quipped.
You'll have one less soon, I told him darkly. He laughed.
And speed. Your speed, to be precise. I've never seen anyone shoot as accurately and swiftly as you. That will be crucial.
He spoke the last part somberly. I might have trained differently if I'd realized what we were up against.
How could you have pushed yourself harder than you did?
He countered before his tone gentled.
Don't you feel ready?
My mouth twisted into a grimace. More than my fear of the serpent, I did not like this feeling that I was a chess piece played to his whim, told what he believed I should know, positioned where he thought I should go. Such was the hierarchy of command as Shu Xiao had warned me, but I was no powerless recruit. Next time, I preferred to decide my readiness on my own. His lips curved as he rose to his feet.
Good night, Archer Xingyin. It's late and everyone else is already asleep.
I expected him to go to his tent, but he walked toward the mountain instead, disappearing into its shadow. Where was he going at this hour? My curiosity battled with my reluctance to intrude, my desire to respect his privacy winning out. We all needed time to ourselves. The flames flickered weakly before dwindling into a smoldering heap. Without its hiss and crackle, the silence was only punctured by the steady breathing of the other soldiers. I had no idea how long I sat there, lost in my thoughts. When Captain Wenshi finally reemerged, he stared at me, sitting alone in the dark.
Why are you still up?
He asked, striding toward me. I'm not tired. My eyes flicked to his hands, streaked with dirt. Why are you still up? I repeated his question back to him.
I needed to inspect our path for tomorrow, to make sure there weren't any surprises.
He sighed.
Get some sleep. Tomorrow we have a steep climb and a hard fight.
I left him then to find my place on the ground. The nights were the hardest. When I lay alone in the dark, the memories I drove away in the light of day came crashing down. Of warm, dark eyes and a teasing smile, which wore away at the hard shell around my heart until I wrapped my arms around myself, struggling to breathe through the tightness in my chest. Perhaps it was worse tonight because I was in the mortal realm, where my mother and father had met, fallen in love, and been happy. Until the sunbirds. Until me. Once I had screwed up the courage to ask my mother how they met. If I had not read the book, I would never have been so bold. But it was so with all knowledge, having just a little left you with a greater thirst. And I had found that she did not mind speaking of her mortal past. It was the memories that came after which she shied from. Sometimes I felt there were 2 parts of her, the mortal and the immortal, of which the former belonged to my father and the latter to me. She had glowed at my question, a flush rising to her cheeks.
We grew up together in a village by the sea, she had told me. He was the clever one, the fastest runner and quickest with a bow. It was no surprise when the soldiers came for him just after he turned 17, recruiting him to join them. He did not complain, only hugging his mother as she wept over him. I tried not to cry too, though we loved each other. Before he left, he promised he would come back for me. For 5 years I waited. Sometimes I thought he had forgotten me along his path to greatness. But he did not. A cloud had fallen over her face then as she pressed her trembling lips together. There was no need for her to say aloud what we both knew, that they had parted, more irrevocably than if my father had a change of heart and never returned, with the entire sky between them now. With a sigh, I stretched out on the cold ground. Everyone else was asleep, just as Captain Wenshi had said.
I still ached, though no longer for my loss alone. My parents had been torn apart as a peach twisted into two halves. Their love was intact, and yet they could not be together. Was that worse than the inevitable finality of death? I did not know. I thought bitterly that, unlike me, at least my mother had married her love. He had been true to her, and she to him, until the fateful day she had taken the elixir. Was this where all paths to love led? Heartbreak, whether through separation, betrayal, or death? Was the fleeting joy worth the sorrow that came after? I supposed it depended on the strength of the love, the memories made, which seemed enough to sustain my mother through the decades of her lonely vigil. Yet, in my lowest moments, a darkness had crept over me, whispering hateful things, that I was a fool, a weakling, so easily discarded. It would have eased my gnawing ache had I surrendered to the hate, letting resentment smother my grief, blaming leeway for the hurt he caused me. It would only have been a brief respite, though, as what I mourned more than any injured pride was the love we had lost, the future which was no longer ours. The aching hollow within my chest gaped wider. I instinctively searched the night for the moon, letting its soft light graze my face, the balm to my pain. Closing my eyes, I could almost imagine it were my mother's touch. My nails dug into my palms. I was more than this ill-fated love. I would not let it define me. I had my family to think of, my own dreams to fulfill, and a 9-headed serpent to slay on the morrow. 15. Sunlight set the mountain afire with an ominous glitter. I gritted my teeth as I hauled myself up, just behind Captain Wenche as we clambered up the slope. Sweat trickled down my brow, my neck, and back as I dug my fingers into the cold rock to grip the slippery surface. I glanced down, the ground so far away that my head spun. For the 100th time, I assured myself that a fall in the mortal realm was unlikely to kill us, though how I wished I could summon a cloud now.
We're here.
Captain Wenche climbed onto a ledge. The rest of us scrambled after him, with Archer Feymau the last to appear, flushed, his shining armor scuffed in places. Had he fallen? Fortunately, he appeared unharmed. At the end of the ledge loomed a dark entrance, high enough for us to walk through unbowed. Xiangliu had chosen its home well. Not only was it protected from magic, but this rocky terrain with its narrow paths and tight openings made storming in with troops impossible. Captain Wenche waited for us to gather before addressing us in a steady tone.
Be on your guard. Xiangliu is powerful and fast. Its fangs are sharper than knives, and its skin is protected by impenetrable scales. With 9 heads, little escapes its notice. And whatever you do, don't look into its eyes.
Why? I asked, already dreading his answer.
It can paralyze you.
A tense silence fell over us, punctured by the shuffling of feet. It was of little surprise that this creature had evaded death for so long, even after earning the Celestial Emperor's ire. He continued, speaking slower now.
Focus your attacks on its underbelly, its most vulnerable part. That won't kill it, but will cause it pain. Our aim is to distract and threaten it until it unleashes its acid. That's when our target will be exposed. That's when the archers will strike. At my signal, we'll attack in 2 groups, flanking and driving it toward the entrance where the archers will station themselves.
His gaze shifted to Archer Feymau and me.
Don't engage it unless you have to. Keep your arrows drawn, ready for the moment to strike. We won't get many chances. Stay steady, aim well, fight together.
As one, we bowed, our palms wrapped over our fists. When we rose again, we stood a little straighter. I was wound tight with tension as I glanced at the somber faces around me. This was no practice session that I could repeat whenever I wished. The slightest lapse would tilt the scales between life and death, and not just for me alone. We left the safety of the sun-drenched ledge, slipping into the cave. It was enormous, stretching so high I could not see the ceiling through the dark. I stood with my back to the light, as did Archer Famau a little farther away. I inhaled deeply, almost gagging as the damp air hit my lungs, laced with salt, earth, and the stench of rotting flesh. Just ahead, Captain Wench's hand shot up in warning. He gestured toward the center of the cave, submerged in inky water. The soldiers followed his lead, moving to the side, stepping over the bones that were scattered with an almost cruel abandon. I squinted, making out a large silhouette huddled in the water, so still there was barely a ripple around it. Was the creature asleep? I wiped my palms, damp with sweat, before drawing an arrow. I had shot countless targets of metal, wood, and stone, though never a creature of flesh and blood. Swallowing hard, my eyes met Captain Wench's. I nodded, as did Archer Famau, signaling our readiness. As the captain's low whistle pierced the silence, the soldiers charged forward, their feet pounding the ground. Red lights flickered to life like fireflies dancing over the water, except these were embedded in heads which reared up as Xiangliu uncoiled to its full height, almost that of a young cypress. 9 heads sprang from its barrel-like body, each plucked from a nightmare, each darting with a life of its own. 8 were covered in black scales with flaming eyes and bone-white fangs, glistening with a foaming liquid. Its 5th had the skin of a fair immortal, except for the dark lines spread across like cracked porcelain. Lips parted, showing graying teeth, and where its eyes should have been were smooth hollows, like holes in the ground, not filled all the way through. It gave me the eerie sensation of an immortal's face which had been peeled off and draped over the serpent's like a glove. Ice slid down my spine as I clutched my bow tighter. Soldiers dashed into the water, raising their swords. The creature's jaws snapped ferociously as it wrapped its spiked tail around those nearest, flinging them against the rock wall. They collapsed with a crash, their cries ringing in my ears. As one of Xiangliu's heads lunged down, its fangs sank into a soldier's neck. He screamed in agony, slashing his blade across the serpent's scaly face. "No!" Captain Wench shouted. It was too late, Xiangliu's head swarming to form a shield around its core, like the petals of a flower closed into a bud. The serpent sprang out of the water with surprising agility, drops spattering all around, cold and reeking of death. The soldiers pressed on. One thrust her sword into the creature's stomach. Xiangliu shrieked, a feral sound, as it slithered toward the entrance, rising higher until it towered over Archer Famau and me. Against the sunlight streaming in, its scales gleamed like onyx. Fear cut my heart. Not the insidious prickle of the unknown, but stabbing terror for my survival. A primitive instinct took over, my ears deaf to Captain Wench's warnings, my fingers releasing the bowstring as the arrow sprang free. Even as it struck, I cursed myself for not staying hidden as instructed, for drawing the serpent's attention instead of emerging at the opportune moment to strike. One of Xiangliu's heads bent to rip out my arrow, tossing it aside almost contemptuously. The rest fanned out around me, those glowing eyes boring into mine. I froze, only now noticing the tiny pearlescent scales covering the eye sockets of its core, barely perceptible in the dark. "Look away!" Archer Famau yelled, gesturing wildly at me. I stumbled back just as a soldier hurled her spear into the serpent's stomach. Xiangliu's cry pierced the air as its middle head reared up, eyelids snapping open to unveil 2 burning coals beneath. Its core! Xiangliu's 8 jaws parted, spewing a frothing, greenish liquid across the cavern, acrid and sour. Those struck screamed in anguish, falling to the ground where they writhed in agony. The acid sprayed onto my arms, foaming as it ate through the cloth, blisters blooming over my skin like crimson poppies. I would have screamed till I was hoarse, yet the searing agony, that of my skin being peeled from my flesh, snatched the air from my lungs. Grinding my jaws until I thought they would crack, I fumbled for another arrow, drawing it through my bow. Archer Famau stared at me, signaling for me to attack, but I was trembling too much from terror and pain. Doubt raged through me that I would miss, that I would fail, letting down everyone who depended upon me. Archer Famau's arrow streaked forward, just as those glowing orbs vanished, the shaft slamming against the serpent's eyelids and shattering to fragments. 9 mouths curved into bone-chilling smiles, those red eyes gleaming with malice as they fixed upon us. Soldiers bolted forward as Xiangliu's tail whipped out, slamming them aside. Archer, Feimao, and I backed away, but 2 of the creature's heads lunged out and sank their fangs into his shoulders. He screamed, doubling over in agony, blood pouring from his wounds. I wanted to buckle over and hurl out the contents of my stomach, to weep for his pain and those of the others, battered by this vicious creature. But terror sealed my throat shut. I could not even whimper. Xiangliu slid closer, one of its heads arching toward me with a languid grace, so close I could see myself reflected in those crimson orbs. A strange fatigue sank over me. My grip on the bow slackened as it slipped from my fingers. The serpent's eyes flared as it opened its mouth. Pure white fangs dripped with foaming liquid. As its foul breath pierced my daze, I recoiled, blinking in confusion. My mind cleared as I swooped down to retrieve my bow. Someone shouted, Captain Wenzhi, racing toward us, his sword arcing high. He hacked at the serpent's belly as Xiangliu shrieked in rage, its head swiveling to him now. "The target!" he shouted as he raised his shield to fend off the creature's snapping jaws. Those pearlescent eyelids flicked open. Red-hot coals flickered to life once more, embers in the dark. The monster's jaws opened, spraying acid all around, splattering on my hands, a little across my cheek where it burned and stung like fire and ice. Black waves of agony swept over my consciousness, dragging me under. Yet the sight of Captain Wenzhi battling the monster lit a fierce resolve in me to not let him down again. My leg muscles clenched as I struggled to hold my ground, fighting the urge to gag from the stench of scorched flesh. Plucking 2 arrows from my quiver, I drew them through the string. Xiangliu's head snapped back, my arms wavering as I fought to get a clear shot, my gaze fixing on its eyes of flame as all else blurred into the background. My arrows tore through the air, striking with a sickening squelch. It stilled, 8 pairs of ruby eyes blinking rapidly. Just when I thought I had failed, that I had missed, a great shudder rippled through its body as its heads rolled back, its necks bunching up as it collapsed onto the ground. Ash and dust billowed in the air. The sudden silence was startling, devoid of the screams and gasps, the rip of flesh. We exchanged stunned glances, in disbelief that the horror had ended, that we were alive. Feimao slapped me on the back, his grin morphing into a grimace as he clutched his shoulder. Someone laughed, another cheered. A wooden smile stretched across my face, even though I did not feel like celebrating. My arms were blistered raw, but my insides knotted at the sight of Captain Wenzhi. The parts of his body I could see were crusted with injuries far worse than mine. "I'm sorry." My voice was hoarse as I looked at Feimao and the other wounded soldiers. "I missed the first chance. I lost my nerve. If I...
Archer Xingyin, stop apologizing.
Captain Wenzhi sounded stern, though not unkind.
No battle is perfect. Few things go as planned. What matters is that Xiangliu is dead, and we all walk out of here today."
He scrutinized my injuries, his lips tightening, in disapproval, I thought. Instead of admonishing me, he pulled out a small jasper bottle, scattering several drops of a yellowish liquid onto my arms. The soothing scent of mint and herbs cut through the foul air, a coolness seeping into my skin as the pain subsided to a dull throb.
"This only numbs it." He passed me the bottle. "Don't try to heal yourself. Xiangliu's acid is laced with venom that needs to be treated properly. When we return, I'll send a healer to you."
"Send one to yourself, too. You're in worse shape than me." I nodded toward his wounds. My legs wobbled then, belying my tough words as I sank to the ground. Struck by a wave of dizziness, I pressed my forehead against my arms. We had won, yet where was the exhilaration upon striking my target? There was undeniable relief that it was over, yes, but it was tangled with this clawing tightness in my chest. Was it pity? For the creature whose life I had taken? Even worse, and buried deeper, was there shame? that I had killed so easily, and that I would do so again. Captain Wencher crouched down beside me.
It gets easier, he said,
as though he could read my thoughts. I'm afraid of that, too, I admitted haltingly.
Xiangliu devoured countless mortals. If not stopped, he would have killed more.
His words gave me comfort, at least enough for my breathing to slow and my tension to ease. Staggering to my feet, I glanced down at the serpent's body. Blood trickled from its eyes, seeping into the ground. It was a monster, not because of its appearance, but what it had done. Grasping onto that, something hardened inside me. I would not mourn what I would do again, for as many times as I had to. Just then, a strange sensation tugged at the edge of my consciousness. Swinging around, I glimpsed something bright deep within the cave, only visible now the late sun shone through at this angle. Captain Wencher, what's that farther in? His gaze followed mine.
Is it the glare from the light?
I don't think so. Do you feel anything coming from there? I asked. When he shook his head, I bit my lip, wondering if I was mistaken. Yet there it was still, that pull on my mind, that faint, elusive awareness. I'll inspect it and make my way back later, I decided.
I'll join you. What if Xiangliu has a sibling?
He cracked a smile. I shuddered. As long as it doesn't eat mortals, we can leave it in peace. We slipped through the narrow passageway at the end of the cave, crossing a shallow stream before emerging in a cavern. A shaft in the ceiling allowed the sunlight through unhindered, striking a heap of glittering treasure. Ropes of pearls, jade ornaments, and gems the size of my fist were piled onto the ground, as carelessly as though they were twigs, leaves, and stones. What is this? I asked, finding my voice.
Plunder from Xiangliu's victims.
Captain Wencher bent down to inspect a few of the items.
No. Some of these are from our realm. Xiangliu must have brought them here.
Picking up a small chest, I flipped its lid open. Inside lay a gold necklace, studded with chunks of amber. He lifted it up.
An amulet of earth magic.
How do you know? I asked curiously.
Amber is a sacred treasure of the trees, he explained, dropping it back into its box. I'll present this to His Celestial Majesty.
We opened a few more chests, tossing aside a magnificent necklace of rubies, a smooth orb of lapis lazuli, thickly veined with gold, and a silver hair ornament shaped like a wind chime. When I ran my fingers over it, a tinkling melody filled the cavern. I gestured toward the gleaming hoard. What should we do with all this? Immortals had little need for material wealth apart from ornamentation or vanity. Magic, rank, and bloodlines, these were the true determinants of power in the Celestial Kingdom. Captain Wencher shrugged.
I'll bring a few pieces for their Celestial Majesty's collection, and each soldier is welcome to souvenirs from a hard-won battle. As for the rest, feel free to dispose of them as you wish.
It was then I saw it. A large wooden box in a corner of the room, its simplicity a stark contrast to the priceless treasures surrounding it. As I approached it, the unseen tug on my mind grew stronger, like sensing an immortal's aura, one which called to me alone. Bending down, I pried the lid off, my pulse racing as I stared at what lay within. A bow strung with shining gold cord and carved of green jade, a dragon from its magnificent head at the tip, arching to its tail at the lower limb. When I touched the cool stone, a thrum of power surged through me like I had thrust my arm through a raging waterfall. Something clicked inside me, as though I found something I did not realize I had lost. Lifting the bow, I drew back its string, almost dropping it, when a frail beam of light formed between my fingers. It did not hurt, emitting instead a pleasant tingle that crackled before it vanished.
Skyfire, Captain Wencher breathed.
The bow fell from my hands. This was said to be a great power, one the Celestial Emperor possessed, of which a single bolt could injure us greatly, even ending our lives. His eyes were bright as he bent to pick it up. "The jade dragon bow," he murmured, running his palm along its carvings. The recognition in his tone startled me. "How do you know? Have you seen it before?" He shrugged. "There are few weapons of skyfire in existence, and only one bow." "Why did the lightning vanish?" I was puzzled, as I had not released the string. A thoughtful expression crossed his face. "Perhaps your powers aren't strong enough to wield it yet." He appeared calm, though his breathing quickened. Raising the bow, he grasped its golden string. The muscles in his arms strained, yet it did not bend, when it had yielded for me like a thread of silk. The moment he set it down, the bow sprang into my hands as though I had yanked it. He raised his head, staring at me intently. Unsettled, I placed the bow back into its box and passed it to him. A loud rattling erupted from within. He frowned as he pushed the box back to me. The clattering ceased. "Hold on to this for now, until we decide what to do. It seems to have formed a connection with you, and this is too powerful a weapon to leave lying around." A thrill ran through me at his words. For some reason, I found myself reluctant to part with the bow, but I made myself ask, "Should we return this to the Celestial Kingdom?" "The bow doesn't belong to the Celestial Kingdom. I heard its owner disappeared a long time ago. Keep it safe and well hidden until we find who we should return it to." His eyes bored into mine with sudden intensity as he added, "Speak of this to no one." I nodded, despite the uneasiness clenching my stomach. Did he fear the Celestial Emperor might claim the bow? Yet it was surely the right thing to do, to restore the bow to its owner. As I stared at the rest of the treasure, an idea formed. "Let's distribute this to the villages Xianglu plagued. While nothing can compensate for the loss of their loved ones, at least their lives will be made easier." He nodded. "Make your selection. I'll call the others." I crouched down, picking up a gold bangle studded with coral, its bright colors reminding me of Shuxiao. I tucked it into my waistband. "My friend will like this." "Nothing for yourself?" he asked. I hesitated before gathering up a necklace of sapphires, the blue fire of its stones like that of Li Wei's crown. Then it slipped through my grasp, clinking as it fell to the ground. "I have no banquets or grand events to attend. Even if I did, I have all I need." I thought of the pendant I wore, which I never removed. It gave me a sense of belonging, knowing it was from my father, and that my mother's fingers had clasped it around my neck. Captain Wencher was silent for a moment, before striding to the cavern entrance and calling for the others. As they joined us, their eyes widened at the sight. Even to immortals, this was no ordinary treasure. While they selected jeweled hairpins, necklaces of pearl and amber, and jade bangles, the captain chose several items for the imperial treasury and the soldiers who had returned earlier. Those who were still able worked through the night, packing the gold and jewels. When we finally left the cave, my gaze flicked once to the still form huddled on the ground. I held my breath, trying to block out the metallic tang of the blood-soaked earth. The sky had lightened to a misty gray by the time we delivered the last of the treasures to the villages. I lingered behind the others, watching as a door swung open and an old woman stepped out, the first mortal I had seen up close. Her skin was wrinkled, and her yellowed eyes drooped. The ragged clothes which hung off her frame offered meager protection from the biting chill, while in her hands was a dirt-encrusted shovel. Was she setting out to toil at this early hour? She stumbled over the box in the entrance, bending down to pick it up. Her jaw dropped, her eyes rounding at the king's ransom within. A shrill cry escaped her lips, the sound piercing me deep. Cradling the chest, she ran through the streets with newfound strength, yelling for her neighbors to awaken. Doors were flung open, shouts erupting over the discovery of the treasure. Some of the villagers fell to their knees, muttering grateful prayers, while others wept as they clutched each other. The air pulsed with their joy and relief that perhaps this winter might not be so bitter after all. I thought we were magnanimous in gifting the fortune, but this warmth in my heart seemed more precious still. When someone stepped beside me, I gulped down the lump in my throat. Stealing a glance at Captain Wenshi, I saw a smile stretch across his impassive face. His black eyes reflected the golden fire of the sun as its rays swept over us, bringing forth a new dawn. 16. There were no silvery ponds or flower-filled gardens to grace my view. My small room overlooked the walls of the palace, but I had earned it through my own efforts and not by another's grace. On the nights when my restless mind drove sleep away, I would climb up to the rooftop to stare at the stars above and the glittering lights of the kingdom below. Sometimes I would fall asleep on the cold jade tiles, lulled by the silvery glow of the moon. It reminded me of the lanterns in my home, whose light had shone through my window as I lay in my bed of cinnamon wood. In the privacy of my room, I stripped off my clothes, eager to wash the blood and sweat from my body. Captain Wenshi's balm was wearing off, and as I sank into the warm bath water, my arms stung. Clenching my teeth, I scrubbed myself raw. Afterward, I slipped on a white underrobe and sank onto the bed, hoping to rest before the healer arrived. Sleep claimed me. When I awakened, the sun had darkened to amber. I sat up and stretched my arms, bracing for pain, yet there was none. Not even a twinge or a blemish remained. The healer must have come while I slept.
Did you rest well?
His voice startled me, one I knew as well as my own. My pulse quickened as I slowly turned. Li Wei sat by the table, calm, as though we had just seen each other yesterday and not months before, as though our last words were not choked with pain and regret. His gray robe was clasped around his waist with a chain of onyx links, and his long hair was pulled through a silver ring. He looked just as I remembered, except his face was leaner, his eyes darker than before, or perhaps the light in them had been dulled. I smoothed my features into indifference, though inside I was a mess of tangled, writhing emotions. Scrambling off the bed, I bowed with stiff formality.
You don't have to do that,
he said in a strained voice. I wouldn't need to if you didn't come here uninvited. I tugged the lapels of my underrobe closer together. Li Wei, this is hardly appropriate. I'm not dressed. These are the soldiers' quarters, and you do not belong here. When he did not appear inclined to leave, I stalked to the wardrobe, pulling out the first garment I found, a green robe that I slipped my arms through, tying its belt around my waist. Not wanting to take the stool beside him, I sat down on the bed again. Why are you here, Your Highness?
You called me Li Wei just a moment ago, he pointed out.
A mistake, I said. You are the Crown Prince. I am a soldier. To me, you are Your Highness. His slender fingers toyed with the cup on the table.
I heard you had returned. I wanted to see you, to know you were unharmed.
He frowned.
Your injuries were severe. Why didn't you heal yourself before?
My skills are at best rudimentary, and with the serpent's venom, Captain Wenshi believed the wound should be treated by a healer. I did not meet his gaze. The sight of him fractured the shell around my heart, reviving the ache that I had long fought to suppress. He cleared his throat.
I believe congratulations are in order. I heard you brought Chang'e down with 2 arrows and a single strike.
He sounded pleased, proud even. Not me alone. If not for the others, I wouldn't have made it out alive, I said with feeling. The color drained from his face, yet I would not let myself read too much into his concern. Your Highness, I thank you for your visit, but I wish to rest. Please see yourself out. I stretched my hand to the doors, tempering my rudeness with a short bow. He did not rise. He did not speak. Was he offended? The chief attendant would have had an apoplectic fit at my disrespect. But then it struck me, how could he have seen my injuries unless... Did you heal me?
Yes.
His gaze held mine. My traitorous mind conjured the image of him sitting on my bed, his hands sliding over my arms as he channeled his energy into them. I didn't ask you to, but thank you.
There is no need for thanks, he said. Have you been well?
I recalled the countless sleepless nights since I had left him, the grief gnawing at my heart, the tears I had swallowed until they ran dry. These were my secrets, hidden beneath my smile. Yes, I lied boldly. My training keeps me busy. Captain Wenja is a hard taskmaster. His jaw tightened as an unfamiliar edge cut through his tone.
Yes, Captain Wenja is most solicitous of you. One wonders why he spends so much time and effort on just one recruit.
I simmered at the insinuation. If he was jealous, he had no right to be. Why are you here? I asked again, in a harder voice than before. His hand curled into a fist on the table.
I shouldn't be here. I stayed away as long as I could. But when you were in the mortal realm, I could not help fearing that you might be in danger. That you might not return.
His confession slashed through my carefully constructed defenses. How I hated this weakness which stirred in me, this futile yearning for what was lost. How easy it would be to admit the ache in my chest, to reach for him as I had dreamed. But he was promised to another, and I would not settle for less than I had to give. I laughed instead, a short, harsh sound, indifference and mockery my armor in this struggle. Do you think so little of my abilities? He stared at me unflinchingly.
Xingyin, that is unfair. You know how highly I regard you.
Not enough, it would seem. Don't speak to me of what's unfair, Li Wei. I cursed myself for the lapse of his name, the sudden brightness which flared in his eyes. You made your choice clear, the night you betrothed yourself to another. I made mine clear when I left. It's unfair of you to come to me now, when you must realize it unsettles me. I should have stopped there, but my resentment and anger spilled from me now. You told me you loved me. You broke my heart. You didn't even tell me of your engagement yourself. Was that fair? Bitter words, and yet it was a relief to have spoken them aloud.
No.
His voice was hoarse.
You have every right to despise me. Just know, if I could choose, it would be you.
He ran a hand through his hair as he did when he was distressed. How I wished I did not know these things about him, and that he did not move me so.
I was going to tell you. The betrothal was not meant to be announced that night, but my mother persuaded my father otherwise.
My breath shook as I drew it in. I was wrong. The Empress had not waited to retaliate, and her blows struck truer than she could have ever hoped. It did not matter. Nothing would have changed. He was the crown prince, marriage was his duty, and I should have realized that from the start. A heavy silence fell over us. Part of me wished he would leave so I could sink back into the bed and lose myself in the numbness of slumber. And yet, a weaker part of me thrived on his presence still, drinking in his face, the sound of his voice, yearning for his touch, despite knowing the anguish which would come after. I steeled myself to ask, Has the wedding date been set? There it was, said aloud. The bandage ripped clean from the wound. Was it not better to battle the monster in the open than leave it lurking in the shadows, unsure when it might strike? The light leached from his eyes.
The betrothal gifts have been exchanged, though the ceremony won't be for years. Princess Fengmei and I are still young, and I've asked for the time to devote myself to my duties. Perhaps then, things might be different.
He did not sound like an eager bridegroom, nor did I understand the delay when the exchange of gifts was a commitment as binding as the signing of the betrothal contract. Who would dare come between an alliance of the two most powerful families in the realm? I had asked the question, invited the pain, peeling away the last stubborn shred of hope from my heart. Yet how sharp the regret which stabbed me now, the claws of jealousy which raked me. Someone rapped on my door. Was it Shu Xiao calling me for the evening meal? I would be glad for any distraction. Striding to the doors, I wrenched them apart, a welcoming smile on my lips. It was Captain Wenche who stood in the entrance, out of his armor and in a black robe.
The healer said she was sent away before she could attend to you.
At the sight of Li Wei, he stiffened before bowing in greeting.
Your Highness, I did not expect to find you in the soldiers' quarters.
Li Wei's expression turned cool, sliding into the imperial mask he wore so easily.
Captain Wenche, you are most solicitous of your soldiers, even visiting them at this late hour. Indeed I am, Your Highness, particularly of those injured.
He stalked into the room, unflustered by Li Wei's hostility. As they stared at each other, their gazes flat and unblinking, my head began to throb. Finally, Li Wei turned to me.
I am at ease knowing you've returned.
He nodded tersely to Captain Wenche, who responded with another short bow. From the set of his shoulders, I knew he was displeased as he left.
Why should your return weigh on Prince Li Wei's mind?
Captain Wenche asked, taking the stool newly vacated. With a surge of his magic, he heated the water in the pot, brewing a fresh pot of jasmine tea and pouring me a cup. I took a sip, relishing its delicate fragrance and soothing warmth. We're friends. We studied together.
He didn't seem friendly. Neither did you.
I kept my face blank, setting the cup back down. Captain Wenche, did you come for a particular reason, or just to stir up trouble where there is none?
I came to check on your injuries. How are they?
Healed. I stretched out my arms to show him the renewed skin, relieved to find his wounds had vanished too. A strange expression crossed his face.
You're fortunate to have been attended to so well.
I snatched my arms back. He knew the healer had not attended to me. How was your audience with His Celestial Majesty? A clumsy attempt to divert his attention.
The Emperor was pleased. You would be in line for a promotion should you decide to make this a career.
His tone lifted like he was asking a question. I cared not for that, yet this was a promising start to the journey I hoped would bring me home. I'm not going anywhere. If they want to give me a new title, though, I wouldn't mind yours, I told him lightly.
I'll be sure to inform their Celestial Majesties of your wish.
He added almost as an afterthought.
The Jade Dragon Bow. Did you keep it someplace safe?
I nodded, thinking of the box tucked beneath my bed, an enchantment woven to conceal it from prying eyes.
I'll be leaving soon to one of the Sea Kingdoms. If you join us, we might find some information on the bow there. However, it could be dangerous. It's no small matter for their king to request our aid, and no favor from the Celestial Emperor comes without a price.
Something flickered across his face. Was it distaste? Or concern for the perils ahead? I'll consider it, I said slowly. He rose to his feet then.
I'll see you at training tomorrow, at dawn.
I resisted the urge to protest. It would do no good. He almost collided into Shu Xiao at the doorway. Trying to balance the unwieldy tray in her grasp, she bowed to him awkwardly. He gave her a curt nod in return, his expression aloof as he left. Shu Xiao set the tray on the table. Your dinner. I heard you were hurt. Thank you. I was glad for her company. Her room was close to mine, and we ate together whenever we could. As I glanced at the braised pork, stir-fried green beans, and ripe loquats, my stomach growled, reminding me that I had not eaten anything all day. Lifting the lid off the bamboo steamer, I took a soft pillow of bread, tucking slices of the tender meat within its folds. Have you seen a healer? She asked. Yes. I was reluctant to elaborate. She slanted her head back to stare at me. You look well. Glowing almost. Maybe you should have brought me my dinner instead. Pushing back her stool, she lifted the hem of her robe, displaying 2 rows of red indents pressed into her calf. Are those teeth marks? What happened? Fox spirits. A few broke in, she grimaced. When their magic is drained, they bite. It doesn't hurt anymore, but they itch like fire, and the healer said it will take weeks for the marks to disappear, if they do. How did they get in? I was surprised, as powerful wards protected the Celestial Kingdom from its enemies. Each night, The soldiers on duty wove shields all along the kingdom's borders, which alerted them to any intrusion.
One took the form of a celestial and slipped through undetected. Once inside, she broke the wards from within. It shouldn't have happened. Even with a transformed appearance, our wards should have detected their auras. General Genuine is investigating the matter.
I fumbled in my pouch, pulling out the jasper bottle that Captain Wenja had given me. Pulling out its stopper, I shook out the last few drops over her leg. As the redness of her injuries subsided, she sighed in relief.
What's that?
Just something Captain Wenja gave me for my injuries.
Oh? Does Captain Wenja often dispense rare medicines to lowly soldiers?
Her stare bored into me. Just this once, was all I said.
Or just this one?
I did not reply, taking a loquat and peeling it with excessive care. She shrugged then, perhaps tired of teasing me when I did not rise to the bait.
How was Xiangliu? She asked,
as though we were speaking of a mutual friend. Dead. An arrow through the eye. It was easier to speak cavalierly of it. Somehow it made it less real. The danger, the life I had taken.
How bloodthirsty, she remarked. Was it a hard fight?
I described the battle, knowing she would be interested in every detail. When I was done, I looked away, admitting, I lost my nerve. Those injured, it was because of my mistakes.
Anyone would have been terrified. What were you thinking, Xiangliu, for your first assignment? New recruits are typically sent on mundane tasks like inspecting the border or searching for some lost artifact.
It was precisely for the danger that I had put myself forward. Mundane tasks were of no use to me. They would not get my name whispered into the Emperor's ear. They would not earn me the Crimson Lion talisman.
She added, At least you recovered in time. No one died. Well, except for Xiangliu. Don't forget it was you who killed it.
I nodded, feeling a little better. It wasn't all bad. We found a cave of treasure. She leaned across the table.
Did you keep anything?
I thought about the jade dragon bow, more precious by far than any jewel. But it was not mine, and Captain Wenja had cautioned me to keep it hidden and a secret. I dug through my pouch for the bangle, pressing it into her palm. She flicked the clasp open, slipping her hand through it. The gold and coral gleamed against her skin.
It's beautiful.
It's just a small trinket. I was glad that she seemed to like it. You should have seen what Captain Wenja brought back for the treasury. Her expression turned curious.
What was Captain Wenja doing here? Not that I'm complaining when there are so many who would envy us.
What do you mean?
Haven't you noticed the crowds in the field whenever he trains? Both men and women alike? Tall, broad shoulders, clear eyes, firm mouth, straight nose, she recited, ticking each item off on her fingers. If only he smiled more, it would put his handsome features to better use.
Handsome? I had thought him striking, but handsome? She shot me a reproachful look.
How could you not have noticed? After those months you've spent training with him, walking beside him, sleeping under the stars by the glowing campfire.
I grabbed a bun and threw it at her, which she deftly caught.
Don't protest too much, she grinned, or I might start to think there's some truth to the rumors.
Were those the same ones which had reached Liwei? Was that why he had sought me out the moment I returned? To seek a denial or admission? Those rumors you mentioned are ridiculous beyond measure, I said, more heatedly than I intended.
Have I struck a nerve?
I shut my mouth at once. Shu Xiao picked a loquat from the bowl, passing it to me. A peace offering.
Few are held in as high regard as Captain Wenja. His fighting skills are renowned, and his magic is unusually strong for one not descended from any known lineage.
I glanced at her. Where is he from?
I've heard Captain Wenja is from some undistinguished family line in the Four Seas. It was no small feat for him, a foreigner, to rise through the ranks to become the youngest captain in the Celestial Army.
I felt a sense of shared companionship with Captain Wenja. knowing both of us were forging a new life for ourselves here. While he was far more capable than I, it gave me hope for my own ambitions, that an unknown could rise to prominence in the Celestial Kingdom. Though I could not help thinking even he had not won the Crimson Lion talisman. After the meal, I helped Shu Xiao stack the empty dishes onto the tray. As I tried to pry the tray from her fingers, she snatched it away. "It's not every day you slay a legendary monster, and it doesn't sound like Captain Wenxi is going to go easy on you tomorrow either." Without another word, she left the room. Sleep eluded me that night. With an impatient sigh, I tossed off the bed covers and left the room. Climbing onto the rooftop, I settled upon the cold jade tiles. How the solitude of night reminded me of home. The lights of the Celestial Kingdom glittered below, whose borders I now defended with my life. Would my mother feel betrayed by my new allegiance? Would she think I had forgotten her in the pursuit of power? My chest cramped at the thought. If only she knew the truth, that all I did was to win her freedom, that we might be together again. 17. I stood before General Jianyun's desk, wondering why he had summoned me. I rarely saw him these days, since I began training with Captain Wenxi and his troops. My gaze fixed upon the table, intricately crafted from rosewood and inlaid with mother-of-pearl in designs of bamboo, lotuses, and cranes. I did not expect such a delicate piece to adorn the office of so pragmatic a soldier. Although I reminded myself that despite his forbidding exterior, the general had shown me kindness I did not deserve. He had seen something in me before I realized it myself. I shifted uncertainly beneath the weight of his stare, the gilded scales of my armor clinking. General Jianyun's brows snapped together in a wordless rebuke. A good soldier did not fidget. I stood straighter, forcing my legs to still. Did he call me here to admonish me for some offense? To lecture me on my carelessness with Xiang Liu? A glimmer of a smile formed on his lips.
"For your first assignment, you did well."
My breath came out in a rush. "Thank you, General."
"As agreed, you may decide your next assignment. There are 2 in need of another recruit. One will go to the Golden Desert to harvest the rare herbs that grow there. While it borders the demon realm, no disturbance is expected with the peace treaty intact."
I nodded, trying to appear enthused. I had never been to the Golden Desert, but gathering plants held little appeal. Perhaps I should have been grateful for an easier assignment after Xiang Liu, except this would not gain the Emperor's attention.
"Or would you prefer to accompany Captain Wenxi again?"
General Jianyun offered.
"While that is his preference, this is your choice. He will lead a troop to the Eastern Sea, whose king has called for our aid to handle recent unrest."
My mind stirred with a fragment of a tale my mother used to tell me. Her voice, soft and melodious, as she had spoken of the Eastern Sea, and... "The dragons," I whispered, so wrapped in the memory of her cool hand stroking my cheek that I inhaled instinctively, a futile attempt to capture a whiff of cinnamon wood. A dull ache gripped me, different from the stabbing pain of heartbreak, though both awoke a longing in me for something lost. General Jianyun tensed, a rare slip in his composure.
"Dragons?"
I laughed to cover my lapse, too shrill, too loud. Just an old fable I had heard, that the Eastern Sea was the birthplace of the dragons. Did they cause this disturbance? He spoke slowly, choosing his words with care.
"The dragons are no longer in the Eastern Sea, no longer in the immortal realm."
A dozen questions flashed through my mind. All I knew of the dragons was the story I had been told. Until now, I had believed them merely a myth, a symbol of power which the Emperor seemed to favor. Before I could speak, the general continued with a frown.
"It is the merfolk, the deep-sea dwellers. They have broken the peace for the first time ever, and while it's just petty skirmishes for now, Captain Wenxi is preparing for any eventuality."
The tranquil exploration of the Golden Desert or the perils of the Eastern Sea. The stench of Xiangliu's cave sprang into my memory, the ominous chink of its scales casting a shiver down my spine. But such was the price of the path I had chosen, and as Captain Wensha had said, perhaps we might find more information on the jade dragon bow in the Eastern Sea. In the weeks before our departure, I trained more intensely than I ever had before. While I was lauded for slaying Xiangliu, deep down I felt I was a fraud, that such praise was undeserved. My fear and inexperience had endangered us all. How arrogant I had been to imagine myself ready, that I could leap into the ocean depths and miraculously learn how to swim. How rash, to think my feats in training could be easily replicated when blood thickened the air, pain and terror engulfing my body and mind. No, I would not make that mistake again. Each night I sank into bed so exhausted I no longer feared being alone with my thoughts in the dark. I no longer sought the solitude of the roof. Why would I, when I drifted to sleep the moment my head dropped onto the pillow? The sky was overcast from the clouds we summoned for our journey to the Eastern Sea. A mortal looking up would have been startled by the enormous cloud banks moving swiftly across the heavens. I had finally overcome my trepidation to master this skill, no longer reliant on another to carry me. My energy flowed in a glittering surge, calling down the nearest cloud. Silver flecks wove into its voluminous folds, imbuing it with my magic as I soared into the skies. The beauty of the Eastern Sea transfixed me. Brilliant colored flowers and plants abounded along the shore, glowing with an inner radiance. I reached out to touch a petal, surprised to find it as firm and cool as porcelain. A lush forest grew at the far end, away from the shoreline, while houses of cedar wood and stone were built upon the sand. Their sloping roofs were paved with turquoise and mother of pearl, and in the morning light they glittered like the cresting waves of the sea. A crystal walkway arched from the beach to the palace, which rose from the midst of the ocean. My gaze fixed on the endless horizon as I wandered toward the shoreline, my boots sinking into the soft sand. All thought of work forgotten, I crouched down and dipped my hands into the cold water, startling the tiny silvery fish swimming in the shallows. When a shadow fell over me, I spun around, squinting against the bright sunlight. Captain Wensha towered above, an amused smile on his lips.
Have you never been to the sea?
I straightened, shaking the droplets from my hands. A few scattered over him, but he did not seem to mind. I've seen it when flying above, or in pictures, and someone told me it was beautiful. My mother's wistful words echoed in my mind, her hopes for the life she had envisioned for me. Footsteps crunched the sand as several soldiers approached. Beneath their watchful stares, I wrapped my palm over my fist and bowed. Captain Wensha, I await your command.
See to your responsibilities before you acquaint yourself with our surroundings.
His tone was stern, yet his smile did not waver as he turned and strode to the waiting soldiers. I kept my head down, hiding my face. An onlooker might think I was ashamed to be reprimanded, but as I gazed at the ever-changing waters, my spirits were lighter than the wandering breeze. And for the first time in months, I sensed the stirrings of anticipation. After the camp was organized, I accompanied Captain Wensha across the crystal bridge for his audience with the king. The palace gleamed against the sea and sky, a shimmering edifice of rock quartz, turquoise, and mother of pearl, with a two-tiered roof of gilded tiles. The large entrance doors were crafted from ash wood and inlaid with gold, over which hung a plaque inscribed with the characters, "Fragrant Coral Palace." All around were more of the exquisite flowers and plants I had seen on the beach, sprays of vermilion branches, bright green flowers shaped like fans, pink tubular stalks, and smooth rocks covered with glowing red moss. An enchanted garden plucked from the heart of the ocean. Through the doors, an attendant guided us down a long flight of stairs. The lower levels of the palace were built underwater, crafted from the same clear stone as the bridge. It was like walking on the ocean floor, surrounded by shifting water and coral reefs all around. As we entered a crowded hall with soaring ceilings, silence fell over the gathered immortals. Only then did I hear the melodious clink from the strands of ivory shells which swayed behind the agate thrones. I had only seen King Yansheng of the Eastern Sea once before, at Li Wei's banquet. Silver hair framed his smooth, unlined face, and his eyes glowed against his dark skin. His teal silk robe was embroidered with waves, edged by glistening curves of white thread. A gold fan-shaped crown, studded with pearls, rested upon his hair. Captain Wenjie and I knelt on the floor, stretching out our clasped hands as we bowed.
"The Celestial Kingdom has answered the Eastern Sea's call for aid," he intoned formally. "Our swords will be drawn, and our bows stretched in your service." "Rise," the king commanded, sounding pleased. "We are grateful for the assistance of the Celestial Kingdom during these troubled times. The merfolk's attacks caught us unaware, as they had always lived peacefully among us before. Captain Wenjie, your reputation has reached even our ears in the Eastern Sea, and we thank the Celestial Emperor for sending us his finest warrior."
Captain Wenjie bowed again.
"Your Majesty is kind, but I do not deserve such praise. It is my honor to serve to the best of my abilities."
King Yansheng stroked his beard.
"Humility accompanying such talent is rare," he gestured toward me. "Is this lady your wife?"
Strangled noises slid from my mouth as Captain Wenjie's ears reddened.
"No, Your Majesty. This is First Archer Xingyin of the Celestial Army."
My ears pricked up at his introduction. First Archer? The king glanced at my armor.
"Ah,"
he nodded with a bemused smile.
"We do not have female warriors here."
Several courtiers tittered, some smothering their laughter behind raised sleeves. My insides churned from the unwanted scrutiny, even as my fingers curled at their disdain. Captain Wenjie swept a chilling gaze around the room, which silenced their mirth more effectively than a sword.
"First Archer Xingyin is the highest-ranked archer in our army. She will be of great assistance to this campaign."
He spoke in clipped tones.
"Your Majesty, could you advise us on the situation with the merfolk?"
The king gestured to the young man beside him.
"My eldest son, Prince Yanxi, will brief you."
A tall immortal stepped forward, clad in a shimmering sky-blue robe. Tiny fish embroidered in crimson and silver darted from their folds. His dark brown hair was coiled up into a topknot, secured with a turquoise hairpin. This close, I sensed his aura, cool and steady, thrumming with power.
"Captain Wenjie, First Archer Xingyin. Since the beginning of time, we have lived in harmony with the merfolk. While we, sea immortals, prefer to stay on both land and sea, the merfolk chose to dwell deep underwater, only surfacing on rare occasions. They revered the dragons who used to live there, and desired to be close to them. The dragons were wise and gentle creatures, helping to maintain the harmony in our waters."
His tone changed, growing taut.
"When the Celestial Emperor banished the dragons from our realm, the merfolk grew restless. Over time, their dislike of land grew greater, preferring to keep solely to themselves in the depths of the ocean. Years ago, my father allowed them to choose a governor to represent them at our court. Unfortunately, Governor Ren Yu is dangerous, his ambitions stretching far beyond his mandate. We received reports that he had recruited a large army from among the merfolk, training them in weaponry and magic. When my father requested his presence to answer these accusations, he refused."
I thought to myself, training an army without a mandate was treasonous indeed, and Governor Zhenyu's guilt was compounded by his refusal to meet the king. Prince Yanxi rubbed his brow, his expression darkening.
"Since then, the merfolk turned outright hostile. Sea immortals who ventured too deep into the waters were attacked. The homes closest to the shore were raided. Each time, the perpetrators fled before our soldiers could apprehend them. Petty banditry is unlikely to be all the governor intends. Do you have any knowledge of his plans?" Captain Wenjie asked. "Recently, he issued his own edict, banning all sea immortals from the ocean depths, a grave insult to us. We believe he wants to overthrow my father and take the throne for himself. Under Governor Zhenyu's command, the merfolk army has grown strong and powerful, while I fear the reverse can be said of ours. We are a peaceful nation, unaccustomed to battle, which is why we appealed to the Celestial Kingdom for aid."
Would we have to fight the merfolk underwater? My stomach twisted at the thought. Like many Celestials, I had not learned how to swim. What need was there when we could fly? Once, in my childhood, I had fallen into the river near my home. Cold water had pressed all around me, clogging my nose and mouth. I had flailed, kicking out, my frantic movements only dragging me deeper into the river's embrace. It was my mother who had plunged into the water, dragging me out. She had scolded me in a trembling tone, even as her arms wrapped tight around me, the comforting beat of her heart silencing the last of my terror. How sharp the remembered fear which pierced me now. But I pushed it aside to say, Celestial soldiers are unused to being underwater. If there is a battle, we should try to draw the merfolk to land. Something flashed across Prince Yenshi's face, akin to surprise. Indeed, we would be greatly disadvantaged underwater. The merfolk are excellent swimmers and are accustomed to the darkness. However, they will be reluctant to challenge us on land. We will need a plan. King Yansheng leaned forward. The captain and his troops just arrived today. We are being inhospitable, keeping them here when they need to settle themselves. His smile was gracious and warm. Captain Wenji, we have planned a banquet tonight in your honor. I hope you will grace us with your presence, along with First Archer Xingyin. We would be honored. Captain Wenji hesitated, his throat working. Your Majesty, the library of the Fragrant Coral Palace is renowned throughout the Immortal Realm. May I have your permission to visit it? I hope to learn what I can about the merfolk to aid us. The king inclined his head. An attendant will bring you there whenever you wish. As Captain Wenji and I left the hall, I grinned at him. First Archer? The highest-ranked archer in our army? I repeated his earlier words back to him. Does this mean we're closer in rank now? He shot me an exasperated glare. It's not an official position, as you're not an official recruit. And since when have our ranks mattered to you? I laughed, not protesting his claim. I had never been disrespectful to him, but neither had I treated him with the deference his position called for. Without breaking his stride, he continued, You are the first-ranked archer in the army. Although, if you slack off and lose your position, you'll have to make do with second or third archer, which sounds a lot less impressive. Ha! I was stung by his insinuation. Care to challenge me yourself? He was known to be a skilled archer, and yet the moment the words left my mouth, I wanted to snatch them back. They evoked too many unsettling memories of a peach blossom forest, of someone I desperately wanted to forget. A shadow of a smile formed upon his lips. Not with the bow, but you're welcome to try me on any other weapon. I did not reply, forcing myself onward, one step after the other, as silence fell between us now. He stopped by the entrance doors, tilting his head as he scrutinized me. You look pale. Tired. You've been training too hard. Why don't you return to the camp and rest? I'll go to the library to see if I can find anything of use. He gestured to the waiting attendant, who hurried over at once. I'm fine, I protested, eager to visit the library too. But he stared at me unrelentingly until I nodded. I could not defy his order in front of the attendant. I'll tell you what I find, he said, perhaps seeing my crestfallen face. Rest while you can. Tonight will be a long affair. 18. An attendant from the Fragrant Coral Palace arrived, bearing a tray of garments for the banquet. Glad for their gracious hospitality, I pulled on the yellow satin dress with turquoise beads thickly sewn onto its hem and cuffs. A sea-green sash went around my waist, its silken tassels falling to my knees. The style of this garment was different from those in the Celestial Kingdom, leaving my jade pendant bared below the hollow of my neck. My only other adornment was a comb of pearls tucked into the crown of my head, as my dark hair flowed loosely down my back. Captain Wenji waited for me outside. My pulse leapt unexpectedly as I walked toward him. He was striking tonight in a forest green robe with a gleaming length of black silk knotted around his waist. His hair was gathered into a carved jade ring, falling over his shoulder like waves of night. It was as though my eyes were rinsed, finally seeing with startling clarity all the fine features which Shu Xiao had described. The wind blew gently that evening. I inhaled the cool air, drowning my senses in the fragrance of the sea, a bewitching mixture of sunshine and salt, laced with an undercurrent of excitement. The rays from the setting sun painted the waters crimson and vermilion, the fragrant coral palace glowing like a jewel in the horizon. In the banquet hall, hundreds of lanterns were strung across the ceiling, luminous and bright. Low wooden tables and brocade-padded chairs were arranged around the walls, leaving an empty space in the center of the room. In one corner sat an elegant lady playing a pipa, the four-stringed wooden instrument shaped like an elongated pear. As she plucked its strings, the melancholy strains of her song filled the air. Her playing was masterful. From the twang of a single string, she wrung a river of sorrow and an ocean of grief. The king and queen sat on a dais at the far end of the hall. A magnificent gold flower with a pearl the size of my palm gleamed from the queen's hair. The petals fluttered around the pearl, which glowed white one moment, morphing to deepest black the next. A little boy stood beside her, clutching her hand. His head barely came up to the armrest of her throne, and his dark eyes were large and solemn. Beside him stood an elegant lady in apricot silk with strands of round pink pearls looped around her neck. Her delicate chin was tilted up as she scrutinized the hall with an expression of regal aloofness. "Is that His Majesty's daughter?" I asked Captain Wenxia as we went to greet our hosts.
"His Majesty has only 2 sons, Prince Yanxi, whom you've met, and Prince Yanming."
Following my gaze, he added,
"The lady standing with Prince Yanming is Lady Anmei, his governess. She's the daughter of a powerful nobleman, and her family holds great influence at this court."
After we paid our respects to the royal family, an attendant showed us to our table. Captain Wenxia filled our cups, and I took a sip of the wine, the mild sweetness of the fermented grains lingering on my tongue. The silver plates before us were piled with exotic foods, most of which I had never seen before. Glossy red crustaceans, golden jellyfish, and black spiked spheres. I thought those looked particularly unappetizing, although the other guests ate it with relish. Captain Wenxia took one and sliced it open, passing half to me. I scooped up its flesh and slid it into my mouth, savoring its creamy yet briny taste.
"Is the food to your liking?"
Prince Yanxi asked, appearing before us unexpectedly. I choked on my mouthful, coughing loudly. Grabbing my cup, I took a large gulp of wine before hastily rising to greet him. He inclined his head in acknowledgement, saying,
"Captain Wenxia, my father wishes to speak with you. He asked if you would join him at his table. I will accompany First Archer Xingyin until your return."
A frown flitted across Captain Wenxia's face, only to vanish in the next instant. He bowed to the prince before walking toward the dais. I could not help noticing how Lady Anmei brightened when he took the empty seat at their table. Prince Yanxi lowered himself onto the chair as he looked intently at me. For some reason, I did not find his interest offensive. Perhaps it was the open curiosity in his expression, or the humor as I boldly returned his stare, determined not to be the first to break the silence.
"First Archer, where did you learn your skills?"
The candid way he spoke reminded me of General Chen. "I trained alongside Prince Liwei when I was his companion," I responded in a similar vein, hoping he did not catch the quiver in my voice. Recognition dawned.
"Of course. I remember you from the banquet. You played the flute well. Do you still?"
"No." I looked away from him. I had not played since that night. Perhaps sensing my unease, he asked,
"Why did you join the Celestial Army? Was this your family's wish?"
"The general who mentored my early training offered me a position." His fingertips played with the rim of his cup.
"Surely there must have been many other opportunities available to one who had served the crown prince."
"Not where I would have the freedom to make my own way. I have no family to advance me, and only my skills to depend on." I lifted the cup to my mouth and took a long drink. "But this is my choice. I would not seek another," I added, thinking of the Crimson Lion talisman. A smile played upon his lips, his eyes crinkling. They were not black as I had imagined, but the deep, opaque blue of uncut sapphires. He picked up the porcelain jug to refill my cup. Your candor is refreshing. The wine was going to my head, loosening my tongue. Why does your highness have so many questions for someone like me? Because there aren't many like you. Captain Chang'e holds you in high esteem. You must be exceptionally skilled to be ranked the first archer. Yet you look like no warrior I've ever encountered. I returned his smile. As there are no women in your army, I'm not surprised. He threw back his head and laughed. I apologize. I'm not usually so inept in my compliments. Had I heard him correctly? Growing aware of the sudden lull in conversation, I glanced around the hall. Many of the Eastern Sea immortals were staring at us, whispering among themselves. Your presence with me is causing quite a stir. Perhaps your highness should attend to your other guests, I suggested, belatedly realizing one does not dismiss a prince of the realm. Fortunately, he appeared amused rather than incensed. Have I made you uncomfortable? That was not my intent. I merely wanted to get to know you better. People interest me, as much as books, music, or art interests others. My fingers twisted the soft fabric of my skirt as I searched in vain for an appropriate response. His eyes gleamed as they fixed upon my throat. Your pendant, the amulet, is a rare one. Could you tell me its origin? My throat went dry. I had been asked about my family enough times that there was a ready answer on the tip of my tongue. However, no one had ever asked me about my father's pendant, usually tucked beneath my robe. I thought it a common jewel, its only value to me in its heritage. I found it in the marketplace, the one that appears every 5 years in the Celestial Kingdom, I said quickly. A fortunate find. He drew out each word. I shifted in my seat, wondering if he had seen through my lie. I was tempted to change the subject, to venture to safer ground, but his interest had piqued my own. Perhaps he knew something of my father's pendant. Why did you call it an amulet? Because it is one. A powerful one, too, of protection. My fingers reached up to stroke the jade. Had my father worn this to challenge the sunbirds? Had it protected him from their deadly flame? Prince Yanqi leaned closer to scrutinize the stone. Unfortunately, it seems to have been damaged. The crack in the rim. Can it be restored? I asked, a little too eagerly. The corners of his mouth dipped. From its carving, this appears to be a talisman of the dragons. If so, only they can restore it. My spirits sank as I released the pendant. The dragons were no longer in the immortal realm. Banished, Prince Yanqi had said, echoing the tale I had heard as a child. You know a lot about the dragons. In the Celestial Kingdom, there is little information on them, I remarked. The venerable dragons, as they were called, were born in the Eastern Sea and lived here until their banishment. Though they were never under our rule, our historians, scholars, and scribes gathered all the information they could find on them. Despite their fearsome appearance, the dragons were wise and benevolent, using their might to aid those in need and maintain the peace in our waters. Many revered them, the merfolk, sea immortals, even the mortals. Many mourned their loss still. If you are interested to learn more, you are welcome to visit our library. Thank you. I was grateful for his generous offer. According to Captain Chang'e, it was not one made lightly. My curiosity was pricked, especially after missing my earlier opportunity, and I longed to immerse myself in the library, if only I had the leisure to do so. Your Highness, have you heard of the Jade Dragon Bow? I asked, trying to keep my voice light. His body stiffened, almost imperceptibly. Why do you ask? I heard someone speak of it, and I wondered who wielded such a powerful weapon. No one, he said gravely. It was lost along with its owner, even before the dragons were banished, and will probably never be found again. It was on the tip of my tongue to confide in him that the bow was not lost, that it was in my keeping. But I knew little of the prince, and I had promised Captain Wenche to not speak of it. Moreover, he seemed to know nothing of its owner's whereabouts. The chime of bells drew my attention, with their ringing silvery tones. Dancers entered, gliding to the center of the hall in a swirl of blue and green silk. A string of golden bells dangled from their waists, and their ornate headdresses were studded with precious gems. Each performer carried a polished jade stick, to which a wide red ribbon was attached. When the peepah players struck up a new song, a livelier melody with rippling strains, they lifted their sticks and danced. Their graceful bodies twirled and dipped and spun, their ribbons streaming after them as bright as living flames. Sighs of appreciation swelled through the crowd, my own among them. 2 dancers sprang into the air, their ribbons spinning around their bodies in a graceful spiral. When they landed, another leapt up high, arching toward the thrones in a remarkable display of agility. As my eyes followed her, wide with admiration, something bright slid from the base of her stick. The softness of her expression morphed into the ruthlessness of a predator. My gut clenched with dread. On instinct, I darted for a weapon. Finding none, I snatched up a silver plate instead, hurling it at the leaping dancer. It struck her in the temple, knocking her headdress askew. She cried out as she fell to the ground in a tangled heap of silk and ribbon. Guests shot to their feet, shouting in alarm. A few glared at me as though I had lost my mind, disrupting the performance with my uncivil conduct. "She has a weapon," I warned Prince Yenshi. He leapt to his feet at once, barking orders to the guards to apprehend the dancer. After a few tense moments, a guard ran toward us. His face was grim as he held out a cluster of sharp needles, glistening with the viscous remnants of a greenish liquid. "Sea scorpion venom," Prince Yenshi hissed. "It spreads swiftly, paralyzing the entire body. Too much would be fatal." The music had stopped when the dancer fell, leaving the hall in ominous silence. The guests exchanged confused glances, their mutterings no longer outraged, but anxious and urgent. The air shifted, taut with strain. Something thudded against the wall. Metal clashed, a blood-curdling cry ringing out. Beside me, Prince Yenshi drew his sword. The doors were flung open, a guard standing in the entrance, his blue and silver armor streaked with blood. "Merfolk! We're under attack!" A spear hurtled through his chest with a wet crunch, its tip now drenched with blood. The soldier's eyes bulged as he lurched forward, before falling to his knees and keeling over. Guests stumbled to their feet, overturning tables and chairs as they scrambled to the back of the room. Captain Wenche leapt down from the dais, his blade already unsheathed. I cursed that my hands were empty, but the prince stripped a bow and quiver from a nearby guard and tossed them to me. Plucking an arrow, I drew it through the string, its red shaft as hard and cool as stone. "Fire coral. Merfolk are vulnerable to it," Prince Yenshi said tightly, his knuckles white around the hilt of his sword. Assailants swarmed into the hall. Their armor was woven from small scales that gleamed like mother of pearl. They raced toward us, turquoise pupils bright, their braided hair flying behind them. Their fair skin was coated with an iridescent sheen, as though I were looking at them through a pane of colored glass. My skin crawled at the sight of their curved swords, coated with the same venom as on the needles. Those cut by their blades froze where they stood, their limbs jerking unsteadily, their eyes wide with horror. As Prince Yenshi rushed into the fray, a merman lunged at him. At once I released an arrow, striking the attacker in the shoulder. He fell to the floor, clutching the shaft embedded in his flesh. I hardened myself to the sight, to his gasps. Remorse I could ill afford, as I shot arrow after arrow at the invaders, though I aimed for their limbs when I could. Captain Wenche would have rebuked me had he realized this. To him, an enemy was an enemy, and to show mercy in a battle was to leave your back unguarded. Yet I could not help wondering why the merfolk had risen against the sea immortals. I was learning that kings were not always as just as in the stories, and the mercy of gods was sometimes flawed. Blood splattered the floor, and my palms were slick with sweat. My arrows plunged forth in a relentless stream, the agonized cries of those struck beating at my conscience. I forced my attention back to the weapons the merfolk bore, the harm they had inflicted. But for as many who fell beneath our arrows and blades, more poured through the doors. Our own forces dwindled as we formed a protective ring around the royal family and guests. The merfolk's eyes gleamed with anticipation as they closed in on us. They had the advantage. We were outnumbered. They raised their hands, the smell of brine thick in the air as torrents of water gushed into the hall. Captain Wenge flung his power out, shards of ice plunging toward the merfolk. Several fell, yet the water swirled higher, drenching our shoes and robes, swelling until a towering wave loomed above. King Yansheng's energy rippled from him, dispersing the wave, though others surged in its place. More and more springing up around us until we were hemmed in by quivering walls of water on the cusp of breaking and washing us away. A soft cry from behind pierced me, that of a child muffling his fear. Was he Prince Yanming? Grasping my energy, I summoned a wind that hurtled into the hall, arching over us like a translucent dome, glistening ice streaking across it as Wenge threw his energy alongside mine. Just in time as the waves fell, crashing across our barrier, I staggered beneath the crushing weight, my limbs aching as I fought back my exhaustion. Just when I thought I would collapse, Prince Yenshi's power surged forth, sweeping the water up and hurling it over the merfolk. Footsteps thudded from a distance. I stiffened, bracing for a fresh onslaught as I raised my bow, my sore hands already drawing an arrow at the ready. More soldiers streamed into the hall, this time clad in the blue and silver armor of the Eastern Sea. I sagged with relief, lowering my weapon. The merfolk charged at the soldiers, fighting valiantly, but were soon overwhelmed. The captured leader was dragged forward. Blood trickled from a wide gash across his cheek as his pupils glowed with blue flame. Assassins, masquerading as dancers with poisoned needles to kill our king. What other despicable tactics has Governor Renyu stooped to? Prince Yanshi asked scathingly. All tactics are honorable when dealing with a dragon killer, the merman spat. What do you mean? Explain yourself, King Yansheng demanded, his voice thick with outrage. Such hatred emanated from the merman's gaze. Governor Renyu told us how you were jealous of the dragon's power and resented their refusal to bow to your rule. You conspired with the Celestial Emperor to imprison and slay them. Prince Yanshi shuddered as though repulsed. A vicious pack of lies. We revered the dragons. We honor them still. We never sought to rule them. It sufficed that they graced us with their presence. His tone hardened. To accuse my father of this is obscene and unworthy of your intelligence. The merman snarled. You lie as well as your father. Prince Yanshi lunged at him, but Captain Wenge grabbed his arm, pulling him back. Beyond your governor's claims, what proof do you have that the dragons were murdered? Captain Wenge wanted to know. Confusion flashed across the merman's face, though he remained obstinately silent. King Yansheng spoke calmly. Your governor has shown you no proof because none exists. His claims are meritless, his accusations false. Nothing more than empty words to stir you to do his bidding. The merman bared his teeth. Governor Renyu swears he will avenge the death of the dragons. Once the unworthy king is deposed, he will restore the merfolk to our glory. He will... He shut his mouth, turning away. Was he afraid to let something slip? Or had an enchantment prevented him from doing so? Captain Wenge did not seem to notice as he laughed, a mirthless sound. Does the governor intend to take the crown after murdering your rightful ruler? How noble of him, to ascend the throne in the name of seeking retribution for the dragons. The merman shook his head vehemently. No! Governor Renyu is honorable. He only wishes to... Again, his words cut off. King Yansheng sighed. I wished we could have done more to aid the dragons. We pleaded with the Celestial Emperor to rescind their punishment, to release them, but he refused. They had indeed challenged his authority, and our hands were tied. The dragons would not have wanted us to go to war with the Celestial Kingdom. They valued peace above all. Dragons have not been seen for centuries, the merman cried. That does not mean they're dead, Prince Yanshi countered. We would sense it if such light faded from our world. As the merman sneered, I bit my lip, staring at him. Something felt wrong. His eyes blazed with conviction, and he spoke with passion. Yet why did he stake his life and honor on hollow claims alone? Captain Wench's voice broke through the silence, soft and low.
What was your purpose today? To kill the king and heir? Yet the Eastern Sea's allies would never accept Governor Renyu as king. What was the governor's plan?
The merman raised his chin in defiance.
Do your worst. I will tell you nothing.
Oh, you will, Captain Wench said, each word ringed with steel. I have found there are ways to extract even the most precious secrets. Not just fire and ice, but those from the mortal world. Limbs severed, skin flayed, flesh boiled in oil.
A chill sank through me. I kept my face still. The merman flinched as Captain Wench leaned toward him.
If you will not speak, one of your friends might be persuaded to. If not, your people will suffer the wrath of the Celestial Kingdom. They will be banished from the Eastern Sea, exiled to the Golden Desert, left to wander and wither beneath the heat of the sun for eternity upon the parched sands.
Prince Yanxi inhaled sharply as his father turned pale. To a sea immortal, such a fate must be worse than death. They had maintained their composure through the grim talk of torture, yet I did not think they possessed the stomach for this harsh a punishment. But what mattered was what the merman believed. I had heard Captain Wench was skilled at extracting answers from stubborn prisoners without resorting to physical cruelties. The rumors had not been exaggerated. Already the merman showed signs of caving, his breathing quickening, his eyes darting around, yet always returning to the captain. I had witnessed Captain Wench's unwavering resolve in battle, his fearlessness in charging to the fore. His honor and bravery were revered by the soldiers, but this was a new facet of his personality. Perhaps they were two sides of the same coin. One could not achieve all he had done without a certain ruthlessness. The merman cowered away. Still, Captain Wench held his gaze, his pupils obsidian dark. Finally, the merman slumped, shaking uncontrollably.
No more,
he pleaded in a thin rasp.
Leave my people alone. Don't hurt them,
he gasped as though the words were torn from him.
Prince Yanming, even if we failed to kill the king, we were to capture his son.
King Yansheng lurched to his feet. He searched the hall for the young prince who was huddled beside the queen in a far corner, his head resting upon her shoulder, blissfully unaware of the threat to his family and life. Prince Yanxi clutched the hilt of his sword, struggling for composure.
A contemptible plan. Governor Renyu must want to crown my brother, while he rules as the power behind the throne, after he disposes of the rest of us.
He nodded curtly at the guards, who hauled the prisoner away. There was no more fight left in the merman, who drooped like washed-up seagrass. Just a short while ago, the hall had been filled with gaiety and laughter. Now armored soldiers replaced the elegant guests who had fled, the groans from the wounded a poor substitute for the soothing strains from the pipa.
I apologize for the abrupt end to our festivities. It was not quite the welcome we intended,
Prince Yanxi said ruefully. Captain Wench's expression was somber.
Perhaps not, but we've gained valuable information on Governor Renyu's ambitions, and how far he's willing to go to achieve them.
Prince Yanxi nodded.
We will plan our path forward tomorrow with our commanders. I promise it will be less eventful than tonight now that we're on the alert. Regardless, we have an ample supply of arrows in the palace.
His eyes gleamed as he added,
plates, too, if the first archer prefers.
My lips curved in a hollow smile, though I welcomed his attempt to lighten the mood. Prince Yanxi inclined his head to Captain Wenxia.
Your aid tonight was invaluable, and my father will be sure to commend you to the Celestial Kingdom. Your reputation is indeed well-deserved.
He glanced in my direction.
As is yours, First Archer.
I bowed in acknowledgement of his praise. Yet my smile faded as I gazed around the hall, at the fragments of porcelain and spilled food, mingling with crimson trails of blood. 19. Sleep evaded me that night. When we were attacked, a cold instinct for survival had enveloped me, and I shot our attackers down unflinchingly. But with the merman's accusations ringing in my ears, doubt wound its way into my heart. Were the dragons in danger? Was King Yansheng as righteous as he was reputed to be? Was Prince Yanxi's admiration of the dragons feigned? No, I thought to myself. He did not seem to be of a duplicitous nature. It had become a habit for Captain Wenshe and I to eat together, and I usually enjoyed these moments of quiet companionship. Yet, this morning, I picked over the meal listlessly.
"You fought well last night," he said.
I winced, feeling no pride at his praise, the agonized cries of those struck still echoing through my mind. "Do you believe any of what the merman said? About King Yansheng betraying the dragons?"
"No,"
he said firmly, with such certainty that a little of my unease dispersed.
"The king's reverence of them is well known. Besides, the dragons were no threat to him."
"Why do the merfolk believe the governor?" I asked.
"That is a mystery. Governor Renyu has the makings of a tyrant, and his ruthless actions last night have only reinforced that suspicion. It's possible he gained such strong support only because the merfolk had been isolated for so long," he added darkly. "They seem to believe his every word."
I lifted a spoonful of congee to my mouth, the grains cooked till they were silken soft, the flavor infused with chicken and herbs. I chewed methodically, as another question hovered on the tip of my tongue, one I was more hesitant to ask. Looking at him, I found Captain Wenshe had left his bowl untouched.
"What else is troubling you?"
he wanted to know.
"Your doubts are written plain upon your face."
I set the porcelain spoon down, turning to him. "Could you really have done it? All those things you said, even exiling the merfolk to the desert?"
"Do you think I could have?"
His expression was grave, and for some reason I felt my answer mattered to him. "No," I wanted to say, but I pressed on. "Yesterday you spoke of severing limbs and flaying skin so readily, like you meant it." No battle was without its cruelties, but it felt wrong to do such a thing to a captured enemy, a helpless one.
"There are parts of my work that I do not care for," he said in a low voice, "and what you saw yesterday was one of them. Not everything is as straightforward as at the point of a blade. I'm not proud of what I said, but imagine if I had not. Prince Yanming might have been taken. Hundreds of soldiers might have died in battle. King Yansheng could have been murdered along with your new friend, Prince Yanxi."
I started, wondering at his biting tone. Yet Captain Wenshe's other words resonated with me. As I myself knew, sometimes we found ourselves in situations where we were forced to deceive against our will, our inclination, and hearts. He continued, as though it was a relief to him to unburden these thoughts.
"The merman cared not for his own safety. Threats to himself he would have ignored, but the lives of his family and friends he would not treat so cavalierly."
A tight smile spread across his lips.
"And it helps that the Celestial Emperor is not famed for mercy."
How well I knew this. I shuddered to recall the Emperor's icy gaze, the dread which had enveloped me at the sight of him. I had no doubt he would eliminate those he believed were a threat. "Thank you for telling me this." I meant it. He had not needed to explain himself. That he did so was an indication of his trust.
"Thank you for listening," he said quietly. "I hope we will always speak like this, that you will share with me any worries you have."
He picked up his bowl, though the congee had gone cool. We did not speak for the rest of the meal, but I ate with newfound relish. The burden on my conscience eased. When Captain Wenshe and I arrived at the fragrant Coral Palace, an attendant showed us to a room on the highest floor. The windows opened out to the azure sea, ever shifting and boundless. Rosewood chairs were arranged around a large table, carved from a single slab of wood. Prince Yanxi and 6 other immortals were clustered around it, engaged in a heated discussion. Dismissing the need for courtesies, the prince introduced us quickly to the commanders in the room. His face was grim as he said,
The merfolk never dared to storm the palace before. They would only do so now, because they believe their army's strong enough to confront us, which means we are running out of time."
Captain Wencher lowered himself onto a chair and gestured for me to do the same. An attendant hurried over to fill our cups with tea.
"They might also wish to antagonize you into retaliating rashly," he warned.
Prince Yanxi nodded tersely.
"We will be cautious. However, if we allow Governor Ren Yu to attack us without repercussion, this will only embolden him further."
His gaze met mine across the room.
"The first archer's point about ensuring the battle is fought on land is a vital one. The merfolk would undoubtedly prefer to draw us underwater, where they are strongest."
Captain Wencher clasped his hands together on the table.
"Orchestrating the confrontation would allow us to choose the battleground. You said the merfolk venture to shore to raid. Is there any other occasion that would bring them to land?"
"None that we know of," Prince Yanxi replied.
"Then we need to lure them to us. What can we use as bait?"
Captain Wencher said decisively. A few generals shifted in their chairs, as though disconcerted by his suggestion. I took a sip of tea to loosen the tightness in my throat. "It should be something that would tempt Governor Ren Yu himself to lead the charge. This can only work once," I added quickly before I lost my nerve.
"I agree. Has the governor led a charge before?"
Captain Wencher asked.
"No. He's powerful but very cautious," Prince Yanxi said.
Captain Wencher sighed.
"If I might speak plainly, Your Highness."
At Prince Yanxi's nod, he continued,
"Magical items or treasure might not be enough to entice him to risk his neck. However, we are now aware that Prince Yanming is crucial to the governor's plans."
Prince Yanxi's chair scraped against the floor as he uncoiled to his full height.
"You want to use my little brother as bait?"
he ground out. Captain Wencher did not flinch, appearing indifferent to the prince's wrath.
"Your brother will be taken to safety at the first sign of danger. We just need him to draw the governor into our trap."
Prince Yanxi glared at him.
"How can you ensure his safety?"
I recalled the young prince from last night, the one who had gripped his mother's hand so tightly and laid his face against her shoulder. It reminded me of how I had clutched my own mother during the times I had been most afraid, when I almost drowned in the river, when I learned I had to leave my home. Something hardened inside me, a voice rising from my throat to say, "I'll guard Prince Yanming." All heads swung toward me then, their surprise and skepticism marked clear upon their faces. I was in disbelief myself. Until this moment, this had not been my intent. Only Captain Wencher smiled.
"She will be the perfect guard to watch over His Highness. I will protect him too. We can't surround him with more guards than usual, not without arousing suspicion."
I slumped against my chair, relieved to no longer be the center of attention. Or was it because of his offer to stand watch with me? A little of the ice thawed in Prince Yanxi's expression as he sat down again. Captain Wencher plunged ahead, always quick to sense an opening.
"This plan will work. After last night's attack, Governor Ren Yu must realize it would be near impossible to take the prince from here. We could spread the news that Prince Yanming will be leaving soon for the Celestial Kingdom for his safety. All we need is for him to appear on the beach, to convince the governor of his presence. First Archer Xingyan and I will be with him at every moment. If this doesn't draw out Governor Ren Yu, nothing will."
A stout general with light brown hair frowned.
"His Highness has just his governess and one guard with him at all times. Moreover," he reddened as he shot me a furtive look, "there are no women in our army. Would not the first archer's presence make the enemy suspicious?"
Silence greeted his astute observation. Captain Wencher tucked his chin between his fingers as his gaze slid over me.
"First Archer Xingyan can disguise as Lady Anmei, the prince's governess."
I froze, quelling an instinctive protest. How could I delude anyone into thinking I was the elegant lady from the banquet? My opinion was apparently shared by many, as the generals exchanged incredulous glances, though they seemed too polite to voice their reservations aloud. Captain Wencher had no such scruples.
"I know she looks nothing like Lady Anmei, but with the right clothes and accessories, some face paint."
"Captain Wencher, Thank you for your confidence in me, I interjected, fighting down a flash of irritation at his callous remarks. Prince Yenxi's expression was still grim.
My brother will be taken away before the battle begins.
It was a demand, not a question. Captain Wenxi inclined his head.
Of course.
The prince spoke to me now.
This would be even more perilous than last night. Governor Ren Yu is dangerous and unpredictable. You would be the target of our enemies' attacks, and to avoid raising their suspicions, you can't carry a weapon or use your magic, at least not until the trap is sprung. While I'm confident we can defeat them, no one knows the outcome of any confrontation. I fear for your safety should they reach you and find my brother not in your care.
His candor and concern touched me. Your Highness, I will take care of your brother and myself, I assured him. He nodded then, glancing around at the room.
Very well, we will proceed. Though we need some time to make our preparations and plant the information with the right sources. It would be prudent if you could spend some time with my brother over the next few days. If our plan is to succeed, he needs to be at ease with you.
Something turned over in my stomach. While I recognized the good sense in his suggestion, I had not spent much time with children. After the meeting, Captain Wenxi and I followed the prince to his brother's quarters. At the sight of us, Lady Anmei rose and bowed, her green brocade skirt grazing the floor. Up close, she was even more striking than I remembered. Her cheeks were stained pink when she saw Captain Wenxi, but it was his courtly bow to her which made me gnaw the underside of my lip for some inexplicable reason. Prince Yenming came forward then, executing a flawless bow to his brother. When he was introduced to me, he showed no recognition from last night. Prince Yenxi wasted no time in drawing Lady Anmei aside and speaking to her in hushed tones. Without another word, they left the room with Captain Wenxi.
Where did Lady Anmei go? Who are you?
Prince Yenming demanded. His cheeks were soft and round, even as his chin jutted out defiantly. I crouched down to look into his eyes, the same blue as his brother's. Lady Anmei had to leave for a short while, but she'll be back soon. I will stay with you for now. His mouth pressed into a straight line.
Do you know any games?
How about Wei Qi? I offered, already searching his room for the board with its smooth black and white stones. He shuddered.
Can you sing? Draw? Craft animals from paper?
He rattled off. I shook my head, my spirits sinking.
You're the worst governess I've ever met.
He crossed his arms mutinously in front of him. I scowled at him, irked by his words. Well, I'm not your governess, and you're being very rude. Maybe if you were a little more polite, I would teach you some of the exciting things I do know. His eyes squeezed tighter, his mouth pursing like a wrinkled grape. I braced myself for his tantrum and tears, thinking Shu Xiao with her effortless charm would have been far better equipped for this challenge. But then he drew himself up straight and with remarkable poise asked,
Well, what can you do?
I racked my mind for something to say to capture his interest, something to live up to my rash boast. I can play the flute, I offered with more than a little pride. He huffed impatiently, rolling his eyes, utterly unimpressed by one of my greatest skills. I've read a lot of books, I added quickly. I can tell you stories. A sudden interest sparked in his face.
About the dragons?
The 4 dragons when they bring rain to the mortal realm. I was relieved to have finally caught his attention. It had been one of my favorite tales as a child, and one with more truth to it than I had suspected.
The one where the dragons get punished by the stuffy celestial emperor? That's the worst of them all.
Before I could stop myself, a snort of laughter burst from me at his irreverent description of the most powerful immortal in the realm. The corners of his lips curved up ever so slightly.
What else can you do?
The animosity had vanished from his tone. I returned his smile. Shoot arrows and fight with a sword. He lit up as he grabbed my arm and dragged me toward a large chest crammed with wooden swords and shields.
Eldest brother says I'm too young to learn, but you'll show me, won't you?
He asked eagerly. Helpless before such enthusiasm, I nodded weakly, hoping Prince Yenxi would forgive my transgression. When Lady Anmei and Captain Wenxi finally returned, We were engaged in a mock battle, leaping over the coral in the garden, our wooden swords thudding against each other. At the sight of them, I hastily dropped the sword, smoothing back my disheveled hair. "Your Highness, it's your bedtime," Lady Anmei said in a firm tone. Prince Yanming's shoulders drooped, but he took her outstretched hand. "Will you come again? Tomorrow?" he asked me. Something bloomed in me at the hope in his voice. "Yes, I would like that very much." The sky had darkened to twilight by the time we returned to the shore. Instead of joining Captain Wenxue in his tent, I ate with the other soldiers. For some reason, I did not want to be in his company tonight. I was on edge, wound tight. After the meal, I paced along the beach, climbing upon a large rock. It soothed my restlessness to watch the waves hurling themselves against the shore in reckless abandon. The rough stone pressed against my back as I lay down, staring at the sky. When the moon shone as brightly as it did tonight, I knew my mother had lit the 1,000 lanterns, and the perpetual ache in my heart eased a little. As I imagined her arms around me, her cool cheek against mine, a smile spread across my lips. Footsteps approached, almost drowned by the crashing waves. "You like to stare at the moon," Captain Wenxue said from behind me. "It's a better view than some." I did not bother to rise. It was rude of me, but I was in no mood for courtesy. As he climbed up to join me, I jerked up onto my elbows, glaring at him. "Will you leave?" I fought to keep my voice steady. "No." "Then I will." I pressed my palms against the rock to slide down, but he covered my hand with his. His grip was as unyielding as the stone beneath my skin. "Why are you angry?" He sounded confused. I snatched my hand away, wrapping my arms around my knees. In truth, I did not know the cause of this gnawing sensation whenever I looked at him. "Was it because I suggested you dress as Lady Anmei?" he probed. The memory of his careless words stung. "You had no concern for me when you said that." His brow creased in surprise. "Are you afraid?" he asked, misunderstanding my meaning. "You can take care of the young prince and yourself, even without weapons and magic. And if I had no concern for you, would I stand guard with you?" "I'm not afraid." "Then what is the reason for your ill humor?" His voice was as soft as the evening breeze. "I know you admire Lady Anmei and that I'm not as beautiful or elegant as her, but it was not pleasant to hear it said aloud." Heat crept up my neck at the recollection. "Admire her? If I was attentive to her, it was only because it seemed to annoy you." He grinned wryly before turning serious once more. "Why would you want to look like her? Why would a falcon want to be a nightingale?" My pulse quickened. I did not know why, except I was suddenly unsure of myself, eager to leave and yet wanting to stay. "Captain Wenxue?"
"Just Wenxue."
His gaze held mine. Somehow I knew it was a moment of great import to him, a mark of trust that he did not easily relinquish. My cowardly desire to leave vanished. I called Xu Xiao by her name, but we were close friends, peers. I had only ever addressed him as Captain Wenxue, as he called me Archer Xingyin. Any other form of address here would have been unthinkable. We had teased, needled, and even argued outright with each other, but this would be crossing into unfamiliar terrain, sweeping away yet another barrier between us. One, I found, I was glad to do without. "Wenxue," I repeated slowly, unused to his name without his title. A smile appeared on his lips, barely perceptible in the dark. The last of my discomfort vanished, replaced by a warm flutter. I did not speak again, and neither did he. Together, we lay on the rock in companionable silence, the waves rushing to shore the only sound in the night. The moon rose higher. Its glow glinted on the water, the fragments of 1,000 silver shards reflected on its surface. The breeze cooled my skin as the warmth in my chest spread to my veins, as though I was drunk on wine.